Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for this new episode of Inspiring Our World. It's Julie Tara here, and we just celebrated Father's Day this past Sunday. A child's relationship with dad has always been special in various ways, but depending on your culture and background, it can be quite different in diverse parts of the world. As we adapt our lifestyles to environmental challenges and our evolving communities, there is one notable area which is changing and heartwarming for everyone involved: fatherhood. Generations ago, fathers played the roles of protectors and breadwinners for the family. They were guardians who fought off enemies and the scourge of natural disasters. Mothers played the roles of nurturers and educators and were often children's sole source of emotional support and physical affection. As women entered the workforce, jumping from 33% to 60% between 1948 and 2001, men's roles in parenting adjusted accordingly to share in the duties of the primary caretaker. The effects of these changing roles are being studied and have already shown some positive effects, not only for fathers, but also on their children. Historically, research on child development has focused more on the sensitivity of mothers to fulfilling their children's needs. However, in the last 20 to 30 years, research has increasingly focused on fathers. This is due to the growing role modern-day fathers play in caregiving. A study conducted by the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development found that fathers tended to be more involved in caregiving when they worked fewer hours than other fathers, had high self-esteem, lower levels of depression and hostility, and coped well with the major tasks of adulthood. In general terms, those fathers lived with co-parenting mothers who worked more hours outside the home than other mothers. Other research on the role of fathers suggests that the influence of father love on children's development is as great as the influence of a mother's love. Fatherly love helps children develop a sense of their place in the world, which helps their social, emotional, and cognitive development and functioning. Moreover, children who receive more love from their fathers are less likely to struggle with behavioral or substance abuse problems. Fatherhood has become more complex as fathers take on more caregiving. 3 areas of fatherhood that anthropologists and behaviorists have reported notable changes in are: number 1, commendation. Fathers of the past took on the role of disciplinarian and were sparse in their compliments. Modern fathers use positive reinforcement to sustain outstanding performance in their children. Number 2, accessibility. Children have the freedom to talk to their fathers more than it was possible in the past. Now fathers communicate freely with their children, and very few topics are off limits with the modern father. Number 3, emotional availability. In the past, fathers were mainly involved in protecting their children from physical harm. Now fathers want to be part of every little detail of their children's well-being, from mental to physical health. In the 1970s, attachment theory was the focus of child development studies, focusing on the first years of children's lives and their bond with their mothers. Michael Lamb, a forerunner of fatherhood research and still continuing with studies at the University of Cambridge in the UK, explains, quote, "That went along with the assumption that the bond with the mother was the only primary relationship kids could form," end of quote. However, Lamb and a small number of other researchers were all coming to the same conclusion. Babies can form as strong an attachment to their dads as to their moms. From that seed has grown an intriguing but limited body of evidence stating that not only are men built to care for children, but that being an involved dad impacts kids' physiologies, psychologies, and outcomes for the rest of their lives. It wasn't until the turn of this century that researchers discovered the fascinating detail that men's bodies transform when they become fathers. Oxytocin, the love hormone, has been known to play a role in a mother's initial bonding with her child after birth. Recently, researchers have observed that the same spike in oxytocin occurs when fathers hold and play with their newborns. The new fathers also register an increase in prolactin, a hormone best known for helping women produce breast milk. Its purpose, it turns out, is greater than that. University of Notre Dame anthropologist Lee Gettler explains that the presence of prolactin goes back hundreds of millions of years to our animal ancestors, before mammals existed, even before breastfeeding existed. Over the past decade, Gettler's research has come to some conclusions about the hormone's function in modern-day dads. Fathers with higher prolactin play with their babies in ways that are beneficial for their baby's learning and exploration, and the fathers also seem to be more responsive and sensitive to infant cries, he says. In other words, this ancient hormone plays some role in increasing dad's desire to be close. In the book, Do Fathers Matter?, science journalist Paul Rayburn summarizes findings from a 2007 Swedish study. Children whose fathers played with them, read to them, took them on outings, and helped care for them had fewer behavioral problems in the early school years and less likelihood of delinquency or criminal behavior as adolescents. When you talk to involved dads, you quickly discover that the positive effects of becoming one aren't just for the children. Fathers' own ideas of manhood expand during the transition, as do their abilities to form rewarding human connections. Having an involved dad has been associated with fewer cognitive delays, better school readiness, a decrease in tantrums and aggressive behavior, and lower rates of depression. You know, I know that we all have very different relationships with our fathers, but I know in my own life, the role my father played was extremely significant. You know, he was a doctor, he was a professor of anatomy and pediatrics at Jesus College in Cambridge, England. And I used to go with him to the anatomy department, and I was full of questions all my life, really, but especially when I was a little girl. And he was very patient and would answer my questions one by one. You know, as we grew up, as you know, me and my two sisters, I really considered becoming a doctor like my dad, you know, but then I observed my mom and all the medications she was given by Western medicine, and I didn't see that working for her well at all. And so my interest, along with ballet and my career with that, became more and more about Eastern medicine, Asian medicine. How were they dealing with the body? How were they looking at helping the body thrive? And a lot of it had to do with nature and diet and simple things. And it made a lot more sense to me. Now, my dad had left our home when I was 11, when I went to boarding school, and went to UCLA in California and lived there till his death. And so he was there, he was a doctor, he was doing a lot of research into the lungs at the time. He discovered a part of the lung called the pneumon. And he also started the Department of Medical Ethics and the Department of Psychoneuroimmunology. So when I would go for summer holidays for a week or two, he was a very, very busy man, but I would go and listen and learn, especially from the forums he would do on medical ethics. So it got me thinking a lot. Now, the more interested I got in Asian medicine and started studying and teaching that, you know, that was hard for my dad. I'll be really honest. He didn't get it. He wasn't interested. He felt that I was making Western medicine wrong, which I absolutely wasn't. But I think we just used to argue a fair bit about how our viewpoints about how to take care of the human body, mind, spirit. And so it was an interesting dilemma that we were in. I didn't see him very often, and then we had that to deal with. He also became an alcoholic at a certain time, and there was one summer where we lost him in San Francisco, and I found him in the gutter on the streets, and that was a very, very sobering time. But he did get through that. He joined AA and became completely clean and never went back to that addiction. And I was incredibly proud of him for that, really, really proud. But still, we had this contretemps about how I brought up my children with a very different diet, a macrobiotic diet. We didn't eat meat or sugar or dairy food. it was a lot of things that he just disagreed with. So we agreed to disagree. Now, my dad, being so busy, never saw me dance professionally, other than when I was 11 and I was with the Royal Ballet in Nutcracker as a little girl. And I was so excited he was there at Covent Garden to watch me dance that one time. But after that, he never saw me as a professional ballerina. And that was really difficult for me, that he was too busy to be able to come over to England and to Holland and to witness my work. However, I will tell you, when I started Niken, I'm going to just tell you, first of all, he thought I had completely lost it. He just said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And he just scorned it and laughed. But he did have some issues with his body from an accident, a particular one with his ankle, where he'd had a bad landing with a parachute. And so the products really helped him dramatically. And he started to get curious. He taught me curiosity, so he was also a curious man. And I started, leading him to different books on magnetic fields and health, and he read them and he started to get more and more interested. In fact, he started taking it into UCLA and saying, this is a whole other future aspect of medicine. And they weren't really listening to him, just like he hadn't really listened to me. And so, he didn't really appreciate that, of course. Nobody likes to not be listened to, not be heard. However, he got more and more excited, and he got all the products that Niken had at the time and really, really loved them and helped some friends of his own, which was very gratifying. Now, what was super was when I was going for Diamond, I said, Dad, I'm going Diamond and I want you to come to our convention and I'm going to get it done by that day. And I didn't know if I was going to get it done, but I was sure I was going to give it my all. And I really wanted my dad to be there. It sort of make up for all the times he'd missed when I was dancing solos and all this lovely thing I had done in the past. And you know what? He did show up. He did come to Toronto, and we had a big convention, lots and lots of people, and I gave a speech as a brand new Diamond who'd gone Diamond the night before. And my whole talk was about my father and what a tremendous influence he had been on my life, and that hopefully I was standing now on his shoulders and taking health and wellness to a whole new level in the world. He was just so happy. He was just beaming and gave me the biggest hug afterwards. And it was really special. I think we all want to feel that our dads are proud of us. That's just kind of innate in pretty much everybody I've ever met. And he truly was. And I felt a tremendous healing with that. He was then very supportive of the rest of my career. I went Royal Diamond very quickly after that, I think a year later. And he was superly supportive. Now, at the end of his life, we didn't know it was the end of his life. He died very suddenly, but we had a conversation. And I remember this conversation very well because I was ironing at the time in my beautiful new home in Boulder that Niken really had provided on all levels. And we had this conversation that was very close. It was very warm. He was very vulnerable. He told me things he'd never told me before. It was really such a special conversation. And then toward the very end of it, he said something that completely, shocked me. He said, Julie, you are light years ahead of me in medicine. And I remember I burst out laughing and I said, Dad, I'm not light years ahead of anybody, but Niken is light years ahead. And he said, yes. And then he said something very beautiful that I would hope every child would hear in some way, shape, or form from their parents. And that was, he said, fly like an eagle, because that is who you are. In that moment, I felt like this warm cloak of blessing wrapped around me from my father to me. It was an amazing feeling. I don't think I knew what to say. I don't think I responded. I was just kind of shocked, but I felt this in every cell of my being, this blessing that he gave me. And then we continued on for a couple more minutes. And then of course we said goodbye. I love you, Dad. I love you, Julie. got to go now. We say goodbye, click, phone. It was very soon after that, I think a week later or so, that he fell. He'd had a hip replacement, he was recovering. He fell and hit his head very hard on the marble of his house. And he went into a coma. He woke up briefly and said, I just want to sleep. Well, my father had made a living will, so we knew exactly what we were privileged to be able to do or not do according to his wishes. I was very grateful for that. My dad was very aware of the problems of not having such a thing. He had witnessed that a lot. So it was so great that he did that, so mindful. And so he passed. I miss him all the time. I miss him all the time. And, you know, as much as I didn't have a lot of time with my father when he was alive, to be honest, very little, yet the time we had was precious, precious. And he taught me about the miracle of life, the miracle of the human body. He was always in wonder, always curious, and he passed those qualities on to me, those values. So I'm tremendously grateful for him in my life. I hope that you have a dad that you can feel that true gratitude for as well. Life is not easy. We all have very different relationships with our fathers. But I hope that at the end of it all, you can say, I'm grateful that he was my dad, as I feel about my father. So in conclusion, I hope our communities continue to evolve the roles of caretakers so that regardless of gender, we each put forth our best efforts. Future generations are sure to benefit. I love this trend that's happening. I'm sure you do too. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful for you. And I look forward to being with you next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and also like it and comment on the YouTube podcast, because we do put it to YouTube as well. So with that, have a fabulous week and enjoy your dads, whether in memory or in reality. All the best to you. Many blessings. Bye for now.